Welcome back to the Deep Dive. If you are listening, you know this as the latest installment of Porter-Pedia, our weekly exploration into the world, the life, and the absolutely unparalleled work of Cole Porter.
And it really is unparalleled. I mean, when you think of Cole Porter, you think of this glittering, almost untouchable image.
Right, night and day. I've got you under my skin.
You're the top, the huge Broadway shows like Kiss Me Kate and Can Can. The standard biography is almost like a legend, a series of fixed points.
Immense inherited wealth, a luxurious lifestyle in Paris, the really complex marriage to Linda Lee Thomas.
His sexuality, which was known, and then, of course, the tragic, life-altering 1937 horse riding accident.
That's the classic narrative. It's the version of Cole Porter that feels kind of preserved under glass, sophisticated, effortless, and a little bit distant.
Exactly.
But today we are going deep, way deep into the archives to find the man himself. Our source material for this deep dive is a really illuminating interview with Dominic McHugh, who, with Cliff Eisen, co-authored the massive new undertaking, The Letters of Cole Porter.
And this book, and what McHugh had to say about it, is just monumental, because it's trying to disrupt that entire narrative you just laid out.
How so?
Well, the collection is this huge gathering of every single surviving piece of correspondence, from Porter, his family, his friends, his business partners. And McHugh and Eisen's whole mission was to take those big biographical tropes, everything we think we know, and either modify them or contest them completely.
With hard evidence from the letters themselves?
Yes. The goal was to show, what the archives actually say about Cole Porter in contrast to what people think they know about him.
So it's not just compiling history, it's actively correcting the record. The glamorous facade versus the man behind the curtain.
Exactly. And what you get is this often entertaining but also surprisingly intimate look at a profoundly complicated person.
Complicated is right.
You have a man surrounded by wealth, but he's constantly haunted by financial anxiety. He was openly gay, yet he was truly and deeply in love with his wife, Linda.
And he was so devoted to his craft, but then in the end, his health issues just overcame him.
Right. And that contrast, that dazzling public persona versus the interior anxiety, that's the real hook here.
It really is.
As the authors say in the preface, these letters speak volumes about Porter's character. They offer genuinely new insights into a figure who is, and I love this phrase, at once familiar and yet curiously distant.
So the surprises aren't huge scandals, but the small humanizing details.
That's the value for you, the listener. It's a shortcut to understanding the man, not just the myth that's been built up around him.
And the team behind this is fascinating. McHugh is a specialist in 20th century Broadway, but his co-author, Cliff Eisen, he's a Mozart expert.
Yeah, which gives them this critical distance. They're working on a whole series of these composer letter collections, Gershwin, Frank Loesser, and the approach is always the same. Look at the evidence and don't let popular mythology dictate the story.
Which is vital here because, as McHugh points out, a lot of that mythology exists because the record is so incomplete.
Oh, it's staggering. He estimated that probably 98% of Cole Porter's total correspondence is just gone, missing, destroyed. People just didn't save letters back then.
98%. Wow, so how can we trust the picture they're painting if so much is missing?
Well, that's kind of the point. That's where the challenge of interpretation comes in. Earlier biographers, like William McBrien, who wrote the standard 1998 biography, had access to some of these letters.
Okay.
But McHugh argues they often mediated the correspondence. They shaped it through their own dramatic lens, sometimes exaggerating Porter's moods or motivations to make him seem more flamboyant or angry than the text actually supported.
So they were filtering the evidence to fit a preconceived story.
Exactly. By giving you the full, unmediated letters, the authors let you paint your own picture of Porter. They provide commentary and context, but the primary source is right there. It shifts the power from the biographer back to the evidence.
That sets the stage perfectly. So let's tackle the first, and maybe the biggest, legend, the myth of effortless wealth. The idea that Porter had so much money, he didn't need to write songs. It was all just a fun pastime.
And the letters just completely contest that assumption. It's one of it's one of the most shocking things in the book, really.
Go on.
While he certainly lived this lavish life, multiple homes, staff, constant travel, he was astonishingly constantly in debt.
In debt. Cole Porter.
Constantly. He was frequently borrowing money from his mother, Kate. And for most of his career, he was, quote, constantly worried about paying his tax bill.
I find that almost impossible to believe. We're talking about the composer of Kiss Me Kate with massive hits and royalties. How can he be worried about taxes?
It was this vicious cycle, and it was tied to the boom and bust nature of Broadway. When a show was a smash hit, like Kiss Me Kate was in 1948, his income would just skyrocket.
Okay, that makes sense.
But the tax bill for that income, which was due a year later, was enormous, and the tax rates for top earners back then were incredibly high.
Right, much higher than today.
So then, if his next show flopped, and his follow-up, Out of This World, was a major disappointment, his income would just plummet. But he was still left with this massive tax bill from the previous year's hit, with no easy way to cover it.
So success itself became this crushing, delayed financial burden. He had to keep churning out hits just to pay the government for his last hit.
Exactly. And this wasn't just, professional stress. It was profound and crippling. In 1951, he wrote a letter to his lawyer, Ben Shankman, talking about his constant dread over his finances.
Constant dread.
His wife, Linda, wrote to a friend that Cole worries about everything. This dread about whether he could keep writing hits to maintain that lifestyle, and more importantly, to keep the IRS away. It led directly to serious mental distress.
This sounds much worse than just artistic angst.
It was. This constant anxiety culminated in a nervous breakdown in the early 1950s.
A full breakdown.
Yes. And the details in the letters are heartbreaking because it was kept so secret. His valet took him to Europe, claiming it was for a holiday, but he was so unwell they had to secretly fly him back and hospitalize him in New York.
And what happened there?
He received electroshock treatments. It was a common therapy at the time, but still brutal.
That image, the witty, dashing Cole Porter, secretly hospitalized, undergoing electroshock because he was so stressed about debt, that just demolishes the entire facade.
Completely. And what's even crazier is that right after this breakdown, he went into this intense creative period and wrote Can Can and Silk Stockings.
Wow.
The letters make it undeniable, the financial pressure, the anxiety.
Right.
It was all directly linked to this mental health crisis. He wasn't writing from a place of leisurely fun. He was fighting for his financial survival.
So how did he finally get a handle on it all? Because he did end up financially secure, right?
He did. He started to get more business savvy. He actually really admired his competitor, Irving Berlin, not just for his songwriting, but for his business model.
Oh, interesting. In what way?
Well, Berlin was very smart about owning and controlling his own songs. Porter started to follow his lead, and he finally joined ASCAP in the 1950s.
The Performance Rights Organization.
Right, and that was huge. Suddenly, his massive back catalog became this steady, reliable, passive income stream. It helped insulate him from the risk of a show flopping.
The total game changer.
But the real turning point was in 1948. He hired a new lawyer and agent, John Wharton. And Wharton had a different idea. He advised him to start exploiting his name through commercial endorsements.
The dog food.
The dog food, cigars, and cocktail napkins printed with his lyrics. Things the aristocratic Porter would have never considered before.
He commodified his own wit.
He did.
Yeah.
And because Wharton's firm kept meticulous records, the last 16 years of his life are the best covered in the book. And eventually they were able to assure him, finally, that he was free of financial worries.
So the facade started to crumble, but his bank account finally stabilized. Okay, let's move to the second big myth. Effortless creativity. The idea that the songs just popped into his head fully formed.
Yeah, and the financial pressure already tells us that's not true. He wasn't just doing this for fun. His letters show this intense, meticulous craftsmanship.
The opposite of spontaneity.
Completely. There are letters about Can Can and his TV musical Aladdin, where he describes his creative process in great detail. He wasn't just waiting for inspiration, he was constructing these songs. McHugh's point was that the songs were highly constructed, entirely created from the ground up.
An intellectual puzzle.
Almost like an intellectual puzzle, yes, which completely undercuts those romantic stories about how his songs were inspired.
You mean like the story about Night and Day?
Ah, yes, the famous one. The story goes that in 1925, he wrote a letter to his lover, the dancer Boris Kokno, in French.
Right. I dream night and day, my Boris.
And since the song Night and Day was written 7 years later, in 1932, people have assumed that letter was the direct inspiration.
A beautiful romantic origin story.
And, according to McHugh and Eisen, entirely fanciful. There is just no evidence in his notes or letters to connect that 7-year-old phrase to the song's complex construction.
So if the reality was so painstaking, why did Porter let those false stories spread?
Public relations. He was pragmatic. He knew a good story, sold tickets and records. The public wanted the glamorous genius, not the stressed-out guy hunched over a rhyming dictionary.
And his own critical eye was always working, always evolving.
Absolutely. By the 1950s, he was obsessed with writing simpler lyrics. He admitted in letters that he struggled with being too wordy.
The great wit thought he was too wordy.
Yes. He admired Irving Berlin's art of simplicity and was actively trying to emulate it. This wasn't effortless genius, it was constant, dedicated self-critique.
It seems that dedication was there from the very beginning.
Oh yeah, the earliest letters in the book are from his school headmaster to his mother. And the headmaster is basically complaining that all young Cole wants to do is practice piano instead of his schoolwork. It shows this lifelong, driving compulsion for music.
That passion really grounds everything else. Okay, staying with the creative process. Collaboration. The legend is that Porter, as both composer and lyricist, was this imperious figure who didn't care about the script, the book, of his shows.
And the letters show a much more complicated reality.
Mhm.
He actually loved getting ideas from book writers. If they were unhappy with a song or a plot point, he'd generally go back and try to fix it.
So he wasn't just dropping finished songs onto the stage like gifts?
Not at all. He was receptive to feedback,
Yeah.
but there were exceptions.
When he knew he had a hit.
Exactly. When he felt he had a hit, he dictated the terms. The story of Brush Up Your Shakespeare from Kiss Me, Kate is the perfect example.
So he was collaborative at first on that show.
Very. He was asking the book writer, Bella Spewak, which parts of Shakespeare to focus on. But then he wrote to her and said, basically, I always have a low comedy number near the end of my shows.
A showstopper for levity.
Right. And he told her, I've written this piece for the gangsters, and your job is to accommodate it. It wasn't a request. It was a directive.
Make space for my genius.
Pretty much. And a similar thing happened on Can-Can. He told the writer, Abe Burrows, I have written I Love Paris's. You need to find a place for it. So he was collaborative on structure, but demanding on placement when he knew he had a hit.
And what was his attitude after a show opened?
Instant detachment. He wrote that during rehearsals, the show becomes something of a person to me. But the moment the premiere audience saw it, he felt, it's no longer mine. His job was done. He was already on to the next puzzle.
That's a fascinating creative mindset. Let's shift to the personal side now, to the most complex trope of all. His marriage to Linda Lee Thomas. It's almost always called a marriage of convenience.
And the letters really challenge that label. This is where you see the deep humanity of Porter. The correspondence shows this authentic tenderness and a profound love between them.
What's the best evidence for that?
It's a letter from 1918, very early on, to his best friend Monty Woolley. In it, Porter describes falling in love with Linda, and he calls it the real thing.
The real thing.
Which McHugh notes was unexpected, even for Porter himself. This just refutes the cynical idea that he only married her for social cover. He expressed genuine, unexpected love.
So it was a true life partnership, just a very unconventional one.
Absolutely. And you see that most clearly in his concern for her health.
Mm-hmm.
Linda had severe emphysema, and through all his affairs and flirtations with men, the most sincere, selfless theme in the entire collection is Porter's constant, unwavering worry for Linda. He went to incredible lengths to get her the best care. She was his priority.
And that support went both ways. She was his biggest defender.
Fiercely. There's a great letter she wrote to him after hearing some songs from South Pacific. She basically dismisses them, saying, how could their music possibly compare to yours? She was his most loyal advocate. You just can't reduce a relationship like that to convenience.
So how did this very open arrangement actually work? I mean, especially compared to someone like Noel Coward, who is navigating similar pressures.
Well, their arrangement was entirely out in the open between them. The letters detail how, at their house in Massachusetts in the 1940s, Linda would stay in the main house.
And Cole.
Cole would stay in a small cottage he built on the property with whichever male lover he had at the time.
No way.
And the really extraordinary thing is that the three of them, Cole, Linda, and the lover, would often have dinner together in the main house. Linda knew exactly what was going on. It speaks to this incredible pragmatic trust between them.
That's amazing for the 1940s. Was it always that smooth, though?
Not always. There was strain. In the 1930s, she did become exasperated and moved to Paris by herself for a while. The letters don't say exactly why, but you can imagine.
But the horse accident changed that.
Immediately.
Yeah.
As soon as he was injured in 1937, she returned and became his primary caregiver. They were inseparable after that, right up until her death in the early 1950s.
The letters to his male lovers must offer a totally different perspective. The book focuses on two main relationships, right?
Yes, with two dancers. The Russian ballet dancer Boris Kochno in the 1920s, and then the choreographer Nelson Barclift in the 1940s, and the contrast between the two is just striking.
Okay, let's start with Kochno. This sounds like the glamorous, tormented artist affair we'd expect.
It was. The relationship was intense, obsessive, and mostly one-sided on Porter's part. The letters are in French. He's just full of this painful yearning, missing Cocknow's kisses.
He sounds like a lovesick teenager.
He does. He's whining that Cocknow isn't writing back. And Cocknow was a big deal. He was Serge Diaghilev's lover. He may not have cared much about Porter's obsession at all. These letters fit that romantic, tortured artist image perfectly.
But then, 20 years later, with Nelson Barcliffe, the dynamic is totally different.
Night and day. By the 1940s, Porter is a major celebrity. He's wealthy. He's in constant pain. And the letters to Barcliffe, a younger dancer, are paternalistic.
More like a mentor than a lover.
Exactly. He's giving him life advice, career advice, financial advice. McHugh notes there's this sense of him talking down to Barcliffe, offering wisdom from on high. It's a complete reversal from the begging, vulnerable tone he used with Cocknow.
So is that about the men themselves, or is it about Porter's own change in status? His age, his fame?
It has to be a combination, but you can't deny the shift in Porter's own power. You see him go from this yearning young man to this powerful older artist dispensing advice. It's vulnerability versus control.
Let's move from the personal to the professional. Stage versus screen. The letters apparently show this huge cultural divide between Broadway and early Hollywood.
A profound and frustrating divide. On Broadway in New York, writers like Porter were respected. Their work was treated as a complete score. Hollywood, on the other hand, was all about the studio system.
The writers were not the stars.
Not at all. And a typical Hollywood musical only had, 4 to 7 songs? The studio just wanted to create 5 hit songs they could sell as records and sheet music.
And legally, they had all the power.
Critically, the studios owned the work and could change anything. Lyrics, orchestrations, without the writer's permission. It made the Broadway guys really wary.
And the book has this amazing document that captures this whole crazy world.
Yes, the Born to Dance Diaries from 1936. It's a day-by-day journal Porter kept of his meetings with MGM executives. It's only about 10 years into the sound era, so it was all still pretty wild.
Give us a taste. What was it like in those meetings?
Absolute whiplash. He'd perform a song for executives. They'd love it one day, then a different group would come in and hate it the next, and then the first group would love it again. Just constant, exhausting reversals.
And the most famous example of this studio interference involves one of his greatest songs.
I've Got You Under My Skin. It was written for that film, Born to Dance. The diary shows it was actually cut from the script at first because it didn't fit the character.
But it's the most famous song from that movie.
Right, because the MGM executives put it back in. Not for artistic reasons, but because they thought it would be a huge commercial hit. Porter wrote in his journal that he knew it was wrong and much too romantic for the scene, but the studio demanded it.
The hit song trumped the story, and on top of that, he had to deal with the censors.
All the time. The Hays Code. He thought it was silly, but he was a pragmatist. He knew the films needed the code's seal of approval to be shown across the country, so he played along.
The famous example being the lyric in I Get a Kick Out of You.
Some get a kick from cocaine. He had to prove it. But what's interesting is he actually wrote the alternate line, "Some like the perfume in Spain," years before it was ever in a movie. He was proactive.
But for the MGM films, he didn't even bother.
A lot of the time, no. The studio would just suggest the replacement lyrics themselves. And he usually just accepted the changes without a fight.
Why so passive?
His view was that the original song was written for Broadway, where censorship wasn't as big an issue. He felt his artistic job was done. If some silly studio wanted to change it for a film, fine. He'd already been paid.
And this wasn't just in Hollywood, right? He had to deal with local censors, too.
Oh, yeah. During the Boston preview of Out of This World in 1950, local authorities made him change some suggestive lyrics. It was a constant battle.
At least he kept his sense of humor about it. I love that quote about the censors.
It's perfect Porter. He wrote to a director that he wanted to, quote, give a big party and invite nothing but censors to find out how their minds work. Frustration disguised as sophisticated curiosity.
Now we have to turn to the final, heartbreaking chapter of his life, starting with that accident in 1937. The letters give this very immediate, unvarnished view of the trauma.
It was horrific. The horse rolled on him, crushing both his legs. He lived with constant debilitating pain for more than 2 decades before one leg was finally amputated.
But his letters right after the accident? They weren't dramatic at all, were they?
No, that's what's so striking. The tone is so dry, almost clinical. He described the injuries in sharp detail, the bones sticking through the skin, the endless infections, but with zero self-pity. He projects this incredible dignity.
But the long-term consequences were just devastating, physically and then creatively.
He never walked properly again, and the creative consequences just Profound. The amputation of his leg in 1958 was the absolute end of his songwriting.
He wrote no more songs after that.
Nothing. A complete stop. The silence after decades of nonstop output is just deafening.
And that physical loss led to this tragic social retreat, a kind of self-imposed exile.
Yes, he developed this deep shame about the amputation. He completely refused to be seen in public. A really sad example is when the film version of his musical Can Can came out in 1960. He didn't go. He sent his servants and friends to see it instead.
So while his own letters were projecting this stoic dignity, the people around him saw a man who was deeply depressed.
They absolutely did. And this is where the other letters in the book become so important. His close friend, Sam Stark, started writing secret letters to Porter's secretary, Madeline P. Smith.
What were they about?
They were worried. Stark wrote that Porter was profoundly depressive, that he was not himself. This secret circle of concern formed around him, trying to manage his decline while he tried to maintain his public image.
What a sad, complex picture, especially with Linda gone by then.
It's a truly tragic end. The letters from his final years are telling because of how short they are. Just brief notes reflecting his sadness, rejecting invitations. He was pushing everyone away.
And the authors included those short, sad notes for a reason.
A very deliberate reason. To show the authentic, moving trajectory of a person who had really given up on life.
Yeah.
The puzzle solver was gone, and the man just crumbled.
So after all this, what's the final takeaway? What do the authors hope we see in Cole Porter now?
McHugh said he hopes the book presents a much more rounded way of seeing him. Not as Marble's statue, but as this deeply flawed, hard-working, anxious human being. The real takeaway is a new appreciation for his brilliance, his intense craftsmanship, and his sheer intelligence.
Qualities that the myth of effortless genius completely obscured.
Exactly. Understanding his struggles, the financial anxiety, the genuine love for Linda, the meticulous construction behind the wit, the chronic pain, it just elevates our appreciation for the work. It shows that life was never easy for him. The songs we love were born from pressure and hard work, not just privilege.
That's a phenomenal summary. This deep dive has really dismantled the gilded cage around him. We've seen the anxious, debt-ridden composer hiding behind the celebrity, fighting the IRS with every hit song.
And the complex, tender love for his wife Linda, alongside the shifting dynamics with his lovers, going from a begging, vulnerable man to a paternal benefactor.
We've learned how he meticulously crafted those effortless songs, battling the demands of Hollywood and the censors, all captured in those hilarious Born to Dance diaries.
And finally, that tragic, silent decline. A depression and seclusion that was only really revealed through the secret, worried letters of his friends.
So we now know that Porter was intensely anxious about his money and his creativity to the point of a severe mental breakdown, knowing that so many of his most joyous, witty, glamorous songs were written while he was battling crushing debt, chronic pain, and depression.
It raises a really important question for you, the dedicated listener of Porter-Pedia. Does understanding the intense struggle and the sheer mechanical effort behind the work, that this genius was born from anxiety and necessity, not just effortless wit and wealth, does that change how you listen to the final perfect product?
Is a song like You're the Top more meaningful, knowing the heavy price its creator paid to write it? That's something to ponder the next time you hear those brilliant, glittering notes.